In the year 754, the Tang census counted 52 million people. 10 years later, it counted under 17 million. 36 million names gone from the rolls. Some historians call it the deadliest war before the 20th century. Others say the truth is stranger and sadder. This is the story of how the richest empire on earth was broken in 8 years by the emperor's own favorite general. Chang'an, capital of the Tang, was the largest city in the world. 1 million people inside walls of rammed earth laid out in a strict grid of 108 walled wards. Persian traders sold glass in the Western market. Japanese monks copied sutras in its temples. At dawn, a great drum sounded, the gates opened, and the streets filled. In 755, none of it seemed fragile. The man who built that world was Emperor Xuanzong. He took the throne in 712 after a decade of coups and poisonings and gave the empire 40 years of order. Historians called his early reign the Kaiyuan, the opening of the origin. Granaries filled, poetry flourished. Li Bai drank wine in the palace, but Xuanzong was past 60 now, and he had grown tired of governing. Into the palace came Yang Yuhuan. She had first been married to one of the emperor's own sons. The histories say she was made a Taoist nun to erase that marriage, then brought back to court as Guifei, precious consort. She was a musician and a dancer. Xuanzong was 34 years older than she was. Poets wrote that from that year, the emperor no longer held court at dawn. Her family rose with her. Sisters married into the nobility. A distant cousin, a gambler named Yang Guozhong, climbed from obscurity to chief minister, holding over 40 offices at once. He was not stupid, but he was hungry, and he made enemies fast. Chang'an became a court where advancement ran through a single family, and out on the frontier, the generals were watching. The danger was structural. To hold a frontier 4,000 miles long, the Tang had created the Jiedushi, military governors who commanded professional standing armies, collected their own revenue, and appointed their own officers. There were 9 of them. Together they controlled perhaps 500,000 soldiers. The capital's own garrison, by comparison, was largely ceremonial. The empire's teeth all pointed outward. One governor held 3 of those commands. An Lushan was born on the steppe of Sogdian and Turkic parents, somewhere near modern Kyrgyzstan. He grew up around the markets of the northeast, and the histories claim he spoke 6 languages. He rose as an interpreter, then a soldier, then a general, and by 751 he commanded the armies of Fanyang, Pinglu, and Hedong. At court, he played the fool. He was enormously fat. The histories claim his belly hung to his knees, and he made the emperor laugh by performing the whirling dance of the Sogdians. Young Guifei is said to have adopted him as a son, though he was older than she was. We cannot know how much of that is legend. What is certain is that Xuanzong kept giving him troops. Then his protector at court died. Chief Minister Li Linfu had kept the balance for 19 years. His successor, Yang Guozhong, saw An Lushan as a rival and told the emperor again and again that the general meant to rebel. Xuanzong refused to believe it. Guozhong began arresting An Lushan's agents inside the capital. Whatever the general had intended before, he now had a reason. On the 16th of December, 755, An Lushan marched south from Fanyang with roughly 150,000 men, Han infantry, and Khitan, Shi, and Tongluo cavalry. He carried a forged edict ordering him to remove the traitor Yang Guozhong. When word reached Chang'an, the emperor did not believe it. Nobody in the capital had seen war on Chinese soil in living memory. The northern provinces had no field armies left. Magistrates opened their gates or simply fled. In 34 days, An Lushan crossed the Yellow River and took Luoyang, the eastern capital, a city of palaces and workshops. On New Year's Day, he declared himself emperor of a new dynasty, the Great Yan. The Tang, which had ruled for 137 years, suddenly had a rival. Between Luoyang and Chang'an stood Tong Pass, a gorge where the road narrows between mountain and river. Two veteran commanders, Gao Xianzhi and Feng Changqing, pulled their forces back and held it. It was the correct decision. A court eunuch accused them of cowardice, and Xuanzong had them both executed. Their replacement, Geshu Han, was gravely ill and had to be carried to his post. Geshu Han held the pass for 6 months. He knew time favored him, and Lushan's supply lines were long, and loyalist armies were gathering behind him. But Yang Guozhong pressed the emperor for a quick victory, and the order came to attack. In July 756, the Tang army was drawn into a narrow valley and destroyed. The road to Chang'an lay open. The court fled before dawn on the 14th of July. Xuanzong left through a western gate with Yang Guifei, her sisters, Yang Guozhong, a handful of princes, and a bodyguard of perhaps 1,000. He left behind his officials, his archives, most of his family, and 1 million people. Some ministers only learned the emperor was gone when they arrived for the morning audience. On the second day, they stopped at Mawei, a post station west of the capital. The soldiers had not eaten. They killed Yang Guozhong first, then surrounded the emperor and refused to march while the consort lived. Xuanzong argued, then wept, then gave way. Yang Guifei was strangled with a silk cord by the chief eunuch, Gao Lishi. She was 37 years old. Chang'an fell days later. The rebels looted the treasuries, the markets, and the imperial tombs, and hunted down officials who had stayed behind. The poet Du Fu was captured in the ruins and wrote a line every Chinese schoolchild still learns. The state is shattered. Mountains and rivers remain. Grass and trees, he wrote, had grown thick in the spring streets. The emperor continued on into Sichuan, over the plank roads through the mountains. But his son turned north instead, reached the garrison town of Lingwu, and there declared himself emperor, informing his father afterwards. Xuanzong accepted it. He was 71 and he had lost. Suzong now had a title, a few thousand men, and almost nothing else with which to win back an empire. The war ground on in the east. At Suiyang, a town guarding the canal route to the wealthy south, the officer Jiang Shun held out for 10 months against forces many times his size. The histories record that when the grain ran out, the defenders ate the horses, then the birds, then things the chroniclers describe plainly and without comfort. The city fell days before relief arrived. To win, Suzong borrowed cavalry from the Uyghur Khaganate, perhaps 4,000 riders, superb and extremely expensive. The Tang retook Chang'an in late 757, and then Luoyang. The agreed price was that the Uyghurs could plunder the eastern capital. They took it. A city that had survived rebel occupation was stripped bare by the army that liberated it. An Lushan never saw the end of it. He had gone blind, most likely from diabetes, and had grown violent with his own servants. In January 757, in his bedchamber in Luoyang, he was killed by a eunuch acting for his son, An Qingshu. 2 years later, Shi Siming killed An Qingshu. Then Shi Siming's own son killed him. The rebellion devoured its leadership 4 times over. The fighting ended in 763, when the last rebel commander was run down and his head sent to the capital. That same autumn, a Tibetan army walked into Chang'an, almost unopposed, held it for 15 days, and installed a puppet emperor before withdrawing. The Tang had won back its capital from the rebels, only to lose it again, briefly, to somebody else. Then there are the numbers. The census of 754 registered 52.9 million people. The census of 764 registered 16.9 million. Taken literally, that is 36 million dead. Most historians do not take it literally. Registration collapsed. Whole provinces under warlords simply stopped reporting. Refugees vanished from the rolls without dying. What no one can do is call the toll small. The empire that emerged was a different animal. The Jadushi never handed their power back. The northeast became hereditary and effectively independent. Tang garrisons pulled out of Central Asia, and the overland Silk Road passed out of Chinese hands for centuries. The great aristocratic families began their long decline. The Tang would last another 140 years, but never again like this. Xuanzong came back to Chang'an as a retired emperor and died in 762, the same year as his son. The histories say he kept a portrait of young Guifei and looked at it and said nothing. 40 years to build the Golden Age, 8 to end it. Every empire believes its own summer is permanent. Every empire is wrong. Subscribe for more reconstructions of the ancient world.